This is True Crime Out Loud.
I'm your host, B.
And I'm your host, Jen.
And a quick little reminder before we get started. If you want to be entered into our t-shirt giveaway, go on Apple Podcast and leave us a review before June 15th, 2021. Then you'll need to drop us a line at truecrimeoutloud@gmail.com letting us know what username you did. We will be selecting 5 random reviews to receive a free True Crime Out Loud t-shirt.
And also, I haven't talked about it very much, but we also have a YouTube channel for the podcast. And this is not us live doing the podcast because you really would not want to see us doing it. But it is the podcast, and we take the pictures that we put on the website and set it to the backdrop of the podcast so you can watch and listen at the same time. Not recommended if you're driving, but just know that's what our YouTube channel is, and it's also under True Crime Out Loud.
Like and subscribe.
Please.
This week's case is going to take us to northeast Georgia. In fact, about 70 miles northeast of Atlanta in Oglethorpe County, Georgia. Oglethorpe County is in the northeast part of Georgia and has a population of about 15,000. It is considered part of the Athens-Clarke metro area, and it's not too far from Athens, Georgia, home of those University of Georgia Bulldogs. The first person we're going to take a look at for this case is Tracy Lee Fortson. And Tracy Fortson is 36 years old, and she is the first female sheriff's deputy hired by the Oglethorpe County Sheriff's Office. She worked out and was in great physical shape and liked to hunt and fish and ride motorcycles, kind of described as a tomboy. And our other person in this week's case is Douglas Benton, and he went by Doug. He lived in the Winterville, Colbert area of Georgia. He was a 38-year-old welder who was an amateur bodybuilder. He was also in great physical shape. He also liked to ride motorcycles, but I think this is kind of cool too. He raised exotic birds to sell.
So let's talk about Tracy and Doug's relationship. They met in September of 1999. And Doug would take her for rides on his Harley-Davidson motorcycle, and they just had this instant connection. In February of 2000, Tracy quit her job as deputy to go work at Doug's welding business full-time, so things were going very well for them. Doug's mom even said that Doug really was into Tracy. But these two had a seriously rocky relationship. Everyone said that there was violence or aggression between the two of them, and this happened on a regular basis. Tracy was said to be jealous of other women and even jealous of the time he would spend with his male friends. She just wanted it to be her and him all the time, and she wanted all that attention he had focused on her. His friends even stopped coming over to hang out with him because of Tracy. I mean, it got just petty things that happened. She once deleted information off of his work computer to do with billing and clients because she was mad at him. She at one point tried to kick over his motorcycle. And if you don't know a motorcycle owner, go ask one. That is like a kick to the gut. So she tries to kick over the motorcycle. He goes after her. So she gets out her gun and he goes to the truck and he grabs his gun and they threatened each other. But eventually they both put down their weapons and she got into her truck and left. But they made up after this. So this breakup cycle that's so common in many turbulent relationships just kept going on and on and on. Well, on June 17th of 2000, Doug's neighbors became concerned because they hadn't seen him in a while. And like we said, he had these exotic birds that he raised, and they were not being cared for. So the neighbors call officers to come out and do what's known as a welfare check.
And a welfare check is a very common call for police officers all over the U.S. And usually what it is someone like this, in a situation like this, they'll just be concerned about the welfare of a friend or family member, and they'll ask the police to check on them. And usually what happens is the police or the sheriff's department will knock on the door and try to make contact with that person. And if they do, they'll say, hey, contact your neighbors. They're worried about you, or, something along those lines. If they don't, unless they see signs of foul play or something overtly out of the ordinary, they basically just knock on the door and then they leave if they don't have any indication that something's wrong.
Well, this is what the neighbors tell the officers who arrived. Now, remember, this was June 17th. They last saw Doug back on June 4th. The officers go ahead and enter the home because it had been such a time frame. But they left when they determined he wasn't at home and there were no obvious signs of foul play like B just told you about. And they treated it as a missing persons case. They also discovered that sometime in early June, Doug's vehicle had been left at the home of a friend, and there was a note on the windshield. And this was a handwritten note from Doug, and said he would be out of town for a while and to take care of his truck. In the note, he said, try to hide the truck and do not try to contact him, and don't say anything to anybody. Well, this friend said he had never seen Doug's handwriting, so he assumed it was from Doug. Why else would his truck be there? So he did as Doug asked. On June 18th, the day after he was reported missing by his neighbors, they talked with Tracy because she's the girlfriend. And she confirmed to the police that they had this rocky relationship, and he had told her he didn't want to see her when they had their last argument, which was on June 4th. So she went home and she just left him alone. But we move on to the day after that, June 19th. On a cattle farm in Oglethorpe County, a farm manager came across a horse feeding trough. And this is one of those big, it's like an aluminum metal oval shaped bin, and they're usually about 2 feet high and they're pretty long. They are a big item if you've never seen one. Google an image and you'll know what I'm talking about. So the farm manager comes across this feeding trough, and it was in an obscure location, and it was painted in a camouflage color pattern, but it was definitely out of place. It shouldn't have been there. So he calls the police. So when the police arrive, the first thing they notice is the indescribable smell of a decomposing human body. But that trough, it was filled with concrete, and on top of the concrete was peat moss. So it's very unusual. Because they smell this odor, they carefully start to chip open this concrete, and they find a human body. This body was wrapped in 2 shower curtains. The day that the body was found, so this is June 19th, 2 days after he was reported missing, they go back to Doug's home because they're at this point thinking this is Doug Benton. When they get back to his home, they smell the odor of kerosene and see signs that someone attempted to burn at least part of Doug's home. They said that the 2 days before when they were there was no smell of kerosene. So somebody's trying to do something. Along with that kerosene smell, they find that it was soaked into the couch and the surrounding carpet, and there were candles placed in that area that had burned all the way down. But for some reason, they failed to ignite this kerosene. What they believe is the Scotch guard on the couch prevented it from igniting and fully engulfing the home. They also see where someone attempted to clean bloodstains from the couch and carpet, but the blood had soaked through the carpet and into the padding and subfloor. So they pull up the carpet and they see underneath where there's bloodstains and somebody had tried to clean. This body that they're presuming is Doug, they conduct an autopsy. They determine it was Doug Benton. He had been shot in the head with a single .22 caliber bullet at close range, and most likely while he was laying down on the couch. He had also been stabbed with multiple stab wounds on his buttocks, abdomen, and leg. They say he did not die immediately because there were signs of him bleeding and inhaling his own blood.
So the police have now found Doug Benton, and he's in the feeding trough. And after the autopsy is conducted, now the police begin to build their criminal case and develop their theories. And the way they do that is they examine what evidence that they have available to them. And so they know that on June 4th, that's the last day that neighbors saw Doug. They said that Tracy Fortson had also been seen at Doug's home that same day and that she had been in an argument with Doug. The farm manager where the feeding trough was located said Tracy had access and knowledge of the farm because she had been hunting there previously. The police also determined that on June 4th, Tracy purchased a shower curtain, and the shower curtain was missing from Doug's bathroom.
So that's your 2 shower curtains the body was wrapped in.
Right,
there.
right. She's purchased one, and then the one from Doug's bathroom is missing. The police also know that she drove to Athens, Georgia on the same day, purchased a horse feeding trough and 10 80-pound bags of concrete mix. It's not looking too good for her. Her mailbox was spray painted in a camouflage pattern and, lo and behold, the same colors as the trough. And Tracy had painted the mailbox herself. The paint samples from her home matched the chemical composition of the paint on the trough. At the site where the trough was found, recent scar marks on trees, like where the bark gets knocked off when the tree is recently damaged, also matched marks on, you guessed it, Tracy's truck. Concrete in the bed of her truck had the same geologic origin as that found on Doug's body. And she was also in possession of the same type of ammunition as the fatal bullet and a rifle capable of firing it. Remember we told you about the note that was affixed to Doug's truck windshield? Well, the note was affixed to the windshield using a special kind of tape. And it's a special kind of tape used by police officers to lift latent fingerprints. It's real strong so that you can pull a fingerprint off of an item or a countertop or, after there's been fingerprint powder put on it. It's not something that the average Northeast Georgian would have, but Tracy would because she'd have been issued it as a deputy. The tape itself had been handled by someone wearing latex gloves because it would pull fingerprints off of the person's fingers if they were oily enough. So the tape had been handled by someone wearing latex gloves, and police also located latex gloves in her home. This overwhelming amount of evidence against Tracy leads the police to develop this theory. And they theorized that Tracy and Doug were at his home on June 4th when Doug broke up with Tracy. She couldn't have this. Remember, as Jen mentioned, she obsessed over him. She flew into a rage that evening and shot him and then stabbed him. She also bought the shower curtain, the trough, and the concrete, and she wrapped him in the shower curtain along with the one that she took from his home. Then she puts him in the trough, which was in the bed of her truck, mixed and poured the concrete over him. Once she got this trough with Doug's body in it to the remote location, she backed up near a tree, tied one end of the rope around a tree and the other around the trough, and then just hit the gas. And this would allow the trough to stay attached to the tree, but pull it out of the bed of the truck. Because remember, with his body and the weight of the trough and all that concrete, she would have been unable to pick it up by herself.
And Doug, like we said, he was an amateur bodybuilder. And again, I have pictures on our website, or if you're listening to YouTube, he was a big guy. Tracy, not so much. She was a bodybuilder herself, but she was not, or she worked out, but she was not a large woman by any stretch of the imagination.
Well, and this trough would be incredibly heavy with even an average sized male body in it, and then basically filled up with concrete. It would be very heavy. And the police, as I mentioned, there was scarring on the trees and everything. The police also noticed, and this further fed into their theory, that bark was missing from one of the trees that could have been torn off by the rope that she used. Police compiled over 100 items of evidence in this case.
What B just presented sounds like they have this mountain of evidence pointing right at Tracy Fortson.
It's open and shut, right?
Well, what does Tracy have to say about this? She tells the police Doug had been involved in the prosecution of a drug dealer. Now, Tracy told this to the investigators, and she is arrested, and she presents this at trial. Investigators say she didn't tell us about this at the time of the investigation, and to their knowledge, Doug had not been involved in the prosecution of that particular drug dealer. She said she did purchase the trough in concrete, but she left these items on her carport and they had been stolen, but she didn't report this to the police. Bullets recovered from Doug were too distorted for a definite match to her ammo or weapon. They just know it was the same type. And in Georgia, there's tons of people that would have the same type of ammo and a weapon that could fire it. They had a handwriting expert to testify for the defense that said Doug had written the letter that was left on the truck himself. Now, here's where we get into a little bit more and why Tracy actually has a defense in this manner. When Tracy left Oglethorpe County Sheriff's Department, who was also investigating this case, she had filed a sexual harassment lawsuit against the sheriff's office and even the sheriff himself. This lawsuit stemmed from sexual talk and innuendo at the sheriff's office. She said that the sheriff even participated in some of this himself. Now, this was before Doug was ever missing.
Sure. But I will say, as a quick side note, it is inconceivable to me, even if she had not filed this sexual harassment lawsuit, I think now an outside agency would be called in to investigate.
Yeah, usually that's the case, or in our experience, that's the case. Well, due to this lawsuit, Tracy said she feels that she was set up because the lawsuit was still pending when Doug was killed. So she thinks the Oglethorpe County Sheriff and some of the members of the sheriff's office set her up to do this. She said, hey, I was a member of law enforcement and I would not leave behind so much blatant evidence to point right at me. This part of it just doesn't make sense. Why would I use fingerprint lifting tape? Why would I use my own trough and concrete in my own truck? And I know better than to do these things. So why would I do it? I could cover it up a whole lot better than what was done. And like I said, she wasn't very large. She was 5'6", about 150 to 160 pounds. And she could not physically move a trough filled with not only a body, but all this concrete, because Doug was 250 pounds and with the concrete, over 1,000 pounds. Prosecution, however, pointed to Tracy's history of violence, not only with Doug, but also with previous boyfriends. She had even hit one ex-boyfriend with a baseball bat, but it was never really confirmed. They said, hey, she might not have been able to lift 1,000 pounds, but she could have lifted Doug. She was very physically fit and worked out. She didn't have to lift the trough in concrete because she used a rope and a tree to pull it off the truck. They said she left this evidence behind because she didn't think his body was going to be found. She left him in such a remote location that it was almost impossible to discover him, at least until after he had decomposed and some of the evidence was gone.
I also have a theory that kind of tracks along with the prosecution's theory that she left the evidence behind because she really didn't count on him being found. I also think that her defense of, I wouldn't do this, I'm a member of law enforcement, actually point to her anyway, because it's so much evidence. Like if you were gonna set somebody, she's trying to insinuate that someone has set her up. But even if you were setting somebody up, you want to make it believable, right? It's almost comical how much evidence there was against her. This mountain of evidence.
Well, as far as the sexual harassment lawsuit, She said Doug pushed her to file this lawsuit. He wanted her to bring it to trial. And like I said, it was still pending when she was arrested. But once she goes to trial, she has no choice but to drop it because she can't afford to keep it going at that point.
But if you wanted to say that you had been set up by somebody else, it makes sense to me that you would like pour on all this evidence. You see what I'm saying?
I don't track there. What?
I'm saying that her argument is that there is so much evidence that there's no way her, as an experienced member of law enforcement, would do it. It has to be someone setting her up, right?
Right.
But if you wanted to show that someone was setting you up, you could set that up yourself, right?
So you're saying that when she did this, she was trying to make it look like she was being set up by Oglethorpe County.
Correct. She set herself up to be set up. You know what I mean?
I see what you're tracking there, but I don't know.
Or she could have just been very angry and not thought it out.
That's probably my theory. If Tracy did this because, she was found guilty, if Tracy did it, I think it was a heat of the moment. And in the heat of the moment, nobody thinks rational,
Sure.
Even law enforcement, because you're not used to committing a murder and trying to cover it up.
And to what our research showed, she had not been a deputy very long, so it's unlikely that she had been involved in so many homicide investigations that she would be an expert in how to avoid detection or anything like that. Sounds to me like she spent a very brief time as a patrol deputy.
I think that's accurate.
So as Jen mentioned, she was convicted July 12th, 2001, found guilty of murder and arson, and received a sentence of life plus 20 years. But on appeal, she was granted a second trial. And this was due to a preemptory challenge of a juror that led to her having ineffective counsel. On April 5th, 2004, she is again convicted, and this time sentenced to life in prison for malice murder and attempted arson, and got another consecutive 10 years. And as of this podcast, all of her appeals have been denied. Every avenue she has for a new trial has been exhausted, and she is currently serving her time at the Lee Arundel State Prison in Alto, Georgia.
So as of June 2021, she is still sitting in prison. And I have a current photo of her from the Department of Correction website on our website. So I'm interested to hear other people's thoughts on this. I mean, it's not one of our usual cases. It's more straightforward than what we usually do, but it's still got some things in there that can cause you to think. So look into this yourself. And like we always say, you can email us and let us know your thoughts on it, or any theories you have, or something that you've read that may kind of go against the way we're presenting this. We are always glad to hear from our listeners.
And we hope you've enjoyed this week's case. As always, we'll see you next week. As always, you can reach us by email at truecrimeoutloud@gmail.com, on Facebook and Instagram at True Crime Out Loud. Out Loud is 2 words, not 1. On Twitter at TC Out Loud, or on our website at truecrimeoutloud.com.
Photos, links, and sources for this podcast can be found on our website at www.truecrimeoutloud.com.